Does your router have band steering and airtime fairness? This one does. And if you have a lot of Wi-Fi devices in your home or wanting faster internet, then you need to know about this. This is the Dynalink Wi-Fi 6 AX3600 router that was sent to me for this review, and it's important to note that Dynalink is seeing this for the first time, just like you are. So the biggest mistakes people are making when buying a new router is just looking at two things like, ooh, this has Wi-Fi 6 and how much does it cost? And that's about it. Don't be those people. So before we test this bad boy, here is what you need to know when evaluating your new router. You want to look for these two acronyms. It's multi-user, multiple input, multiple output technology. And basically what that means is that your Wi-Fi router is able to talk to multiple devices simultaneously. And therefore, this reduces the time each device has to wait and dramatically speeds up your network. Now, OFDMA is orthogonal. OFDMA is orthogonal frequency division multiple access, which is basically super important to Wi-Fi 6. The typical explanation is to picture OFDMA as a delivery truck. In the past, delivery truck would pick up its cargo from one device and deliver it to the router before heading out to pick up more cargo from another device and bringing it back to the router. Obviously, that's highly inefficient. With OFDMA, basically what happens, the same truck is able to make multiple stops along the journey, picking up data from various devices before delivering it to the router. This is built for efficiency, this is built for speed, and this is really going to help your network. Now, the next thing to look out for is the look. And the look is often overlooked. Well, we all know that for a wireless router to provide the best coverage and speed, it should not be tucked away in some cupboards in the corner of the house, but it should rather be placed somewhere central in the home. Now, nobody wants an ugly looking tech gadget in the middle of their lounge. So I must say that I really like this new tower look that routers are going for. Kind of looks like a smart speaker, so you can place it in any room without it being too much of an eyesore. Right, the next thing to look out for is coverage. You want a router that can cover your home without needing any extenders. So the rule is to rather go for a router that is much bigger than your home, as that reduces the areas that have dead zones. Now, this router can cover up to 4,800 square feet home, but of course it does depend on the home's layout. Things like thick walls, lots of metal, other Wi-Fi interference will limit the distance, say, versus an open plan home. Okay, next up on the list is processing. This is super important and definitely overlooked. Since routers are essentially mini computers just without the screen and the keyboard, the better the hardware, the better they operate and the more responsive they are. Now, this Dynalink router is powered by 2.2 gigahertz quad-core CPU and has 1 gig of DDR4L RAM, which basically means it has enough processing power to handle and fully manage the entire network. And this is important because this one can handle up to 200 devices. Okay, next up is connectivity. Now, this Dynalink has 4 air-gain 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz internal antennas for Wi-Fi. It also has options for wired connections, 4 1 gig LAN ports. Now, it also has a USB 3 port, so you can connect things like an external hard drive and provide network storage for your entire network. More on that shortly. Okay, so at least on paper, this router definitely stacks up against the competition. So the next step is to show you the band steering, QoS, and airtime fairness. Let's start off with band steering. Now, when a device makes a connection to your network via Wi-Fi, the Dynalink router will determine if that device actually has the ability to connect on 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz. In other words, it's dual band. If it can, the router will basically steer or push that device to connect on the 5 gigahertz network over the 2.4 gigahertz. Now, it does that so devices such as your smart TV and your laptops, etc., use the less congested 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi band, and they aren't being slowed down by those pesky 2.4 gigahertz devices. Okay, next thing we want to enable is QoS, or quality of service. Now, this isn't new, and yet a lot of people are still not enabling this. So let's say you're watching a 4K movie and your network is slow. You will notice that as your movie starts to buffer. So by enabling QoS, you're telling the router to, look, give my smart TV a priority so it gets more bandwidth than perhaps someone sending an email, which, let's be honest, if it takes an extra minute or two to send that mail, not the end of the world. Okay, let's talk about airtime fairness. Your devices are constantly competing for the opportunity to send and receive data when they're connected to the same Wi-Fi. So when a slow device is transmitting and it takes longer for the data to be sent and to be received, and whilst this is happening, the other devices are basically just waiting, and that's just not fair. So when you enable Airtime Fairness, you're giving devices equal opportunity to send and receive regardless of their capability. So the big question is, how does it perform? So here is the test with my usual router, and of course there are no extenders, no mesh Wi-Fi on the system. It's just router versus router. Okay, let's start off with the original router connected to Mesh, which is my 5 gigahertz network. Fire off the Wi-Fi analyzer. I'm looking at the link speed, 780 megabits per second, right next to the router itself. Head over to the couch and I'm going to see what kind of speed I'm going to get. 117 megabits per second, right by the sofa. And then let's take the show outside. Let's go to the garden by the trusty trampoline. And here I'm getting 13 megabits per second. Is that, oh no, 6 megabits per second. That seems to be the final speed. Okay, that is on my original baseline test. Now, let me switch over to the Dynalink router, and whilst I do that, hit that subscribe button below if you haven't already, and if you like this kind of real-world practical tech stuff. Okay, so now I can see that the Dynalink router is powered on, so let's do that test. Okay, firing off the Dynalink router test. Here we're right next to the router itself. Let's just make sure we connect it to the Dyna 5G, which it is. You can see Hamesh there is not actually connected. What am I going to get right next to the router? 866 megabits per second right by the router. Let's take the show back to the sofa, and what am I going to get there? Wow, look at that. 468. Is it going to settle at 468 or not? 468 megabits per second. That's a lot faster than the previous one. Okay, let's take the show back outside to that same trampoline, to my good old trusty area. What am I going to get now? 58 megabits per second. That is definitely a lot faster than that original 6 megabits per second. So link speed testing between my device and the router itself, you can clearly see that there is a difference. So will this give you faster internet than you pay for from your ISP? No, absolutely not. Nothing will. There's no hack, tip or trick that will do that. Your ISP caps your connection at a certain speed and end of story. What this does do is give you a faster and more efficient internal network, especially with more and more devices being part of our home network. The faster and more efficient your network is, the more data that it can push and pull, the better it seems, the less lag you're going to have, the better experience you're going to have. Now, I spoke about the USB port on the router, and if you're not sure what that is and what cool things you can do with your USB port or why it's even there, check out this video over here, and also check out this video over here that YouTube thinks you should watch. Hit the head, I think it's down here, hit the head here to subscribe, and I will see you in this video, or I'll see you in this video, or I'll see you in both. Let's go.